The dust had barely settled on her husband's grave when Amelia Lawson discovered she was carrying his child, and the thought filled her with more dread than joy. Brownsville, Texas, in the summer of 1878 was a town that thrived on cattle drives and cotton trades, where the Rio Grande carved its lazy path between two nations and secrets festered in the humid air like open wounds. Amelia stood at the window of the boarding house, where she had taken refuge 3 weeks prior, watching the street below with hollow eyes that had forgotten how to hope. Her hand rested on her still flat stomach, and she wondered how long she could hide the truth before the whole town knew that Marcus Lawson's cruelty would live on in the child she carried. Marcus had been a respected rancher, a man who smiled in public and closed his fists in private. Their marriage had lasted 2 brutal years before his horse threw him into a ravine during a thunderstorm. The town mourned him. Amelia had stood at his funeral and felt nothing but the desperate wish that she could feel relief without guilt. But now this unwanted legacy growing inside her, a constant reminder of every night she had endured his rage and his hands. The boarding house was run by a widow named Clara Hoffman who asked few questions and expected payment on time. Amelia had sold most of her jewelry to cover the first month, but she knew her money would not last. She had no family, no education beyond basic reading, and no prospects for a woman in her condition. The respectable families would not hire her once they knew. The less respectable establishments would not want her either, not with a child coming. She was contemplating her dwindling options when she heard the commotion in the street below. A group of drovers had arrived with a cattle herd, their horses kicking up clouds of dust that turned golden in the afternoon sun. Cowboys hollered and laughed, their voices rough with trail weariness and the promise of whiskey. Amelia turned away from the window, uninterested in their revelry, but then a different sound caught her attention. A woman's voice, frightened and pleading. Amelia looked down again and saw a Mexican woman being cornered by 3 men near the alley beside the boarding house. The woman clutched a basket of laundry, backing away as the men advanced with ugly grins. Amelia's heart hammered. She knew that fear. She had lived it. Before she could think better of it, she was rushing down the stairs and out the side door. "Leave her alone." Her voice came out stronger than she felt, and the men turned to look at her with surprise and then amusement. "Well now, what do we have here?" one of them drawled. He was missing 2 front teeth and smelled of unwashed skin and rot-gut whiskey. "You want to take her place, pretty lady?" Amelia's courage faltered, but she held her ground. "I said leave her alone. Mrs. Hoffman will call the sheriff." "The sheriff is down in Matamoros for the week," another man said, taking a step toward Amelia. "Seems like nobody's around to stop us from having a little fun." The Mexican woman used the distraction to bolt, her laundry scattering across the dusty ground. The men cursed, and the one closest to Amelia reached out to grab her arm. She twisted away, but he was faster, his fingers digging into her wrist hard enough to bruise. "You are going to regret that," he hissed, his breath hot and foul against her face. Then a voice cut through the air like a blade. "Let her go." The man's grip loosened just enough for Amelia to wrench free. She stumbled backward and found herself looking at a cowboy who had seemingly appeared from nowhere. He was tall, with broad shoulders and sun-darkened skin that spoke of years in the saddle. His hair was dark brown and needed cutting, curling slightly at his collar. But it was his eyes that held her attention, gray-green and steady, the kind of eyes that had seen trouble and faced it down. "This is not your business, friend," the toothless man said, though his voice had lost some of its bravado. "I am making it my business," the cowboy said quietly. His hand rested on the gun at his hip, not threatening, Just present. The lady asked you to leave. I suggest you do that now." For a moment, the tension stretched tight as a wire. Then the three men exchanged glances and seemed to decide the fight was not worth it. They backed away, muttering curses and promises of future retribution before disappearing into the saloon across the street. Amelia realized she was shaking. The cowboy turned to her, his expression softening. "Are you hurt, madam?" "No, no, I am fine, thank you." She rubbed her wrist where the man had grabbed her. "That was foolish of me." "It was brave," he corrected gently. "Foolish too, maybe, but brave first." He touched the brim of his hat. "Quinn Carter, madam. I am just passing through with a herd, but I could not stand by and watch that." "Amelia Lawson." She met his eyes and saw something there that made her chest tighten, a kindness she had almost forgotten existed in men. "I appreciate what you did, Mr. Carter. Just Quinn is fine." He glanced at the scattered laundry and began picking up the fallen garments, shaking the dust from them. Amelia knelt to help him, and their hands brushed over a pillowcase. She pulled back as if burned, and he noticed, his brow furrowing slightly. "I should get back inside," Amelia said quickly, gathering the last of the laundry into the basket. "Of course." "But madam, those men, they will be drinking all evening. You should stay inside, keep the doors locked." She nodded, hugging the basket to her chest. As she turned to go, Quinn spoke again. "Mrs. Lawson, if you do not mind my asking, do you have someone looking out for you? A husband, family?" The question was innocent, but it struck her like a physical blow. "My husband passed recently," she said, her voice flat. "I have no family." Something shifted in Quinn's expression, a shadow of sadness or perhaps understanding. "I am sorry for your loss." Amelia almost laughed at that. Sorry for her loss. If only he knew. But she just nodded and fled inside, leaving Quinn standing in the street with dust settling around his boots. That night, Amelia lay awake in her narrow bed, listening to the sounds of revelry from the saloons. She thought about Quinn Carter's steady eyes and gentle hands, and she felt a pang of longing so sharp it hurt. What would it be like to be with a man like that, someone who helped instead of hurt? But the thought was followed immediately by shame and fear. She was carrying Marcus's child. No decent man would want her now, especially not if he knew the truth about her marriage, about how she had not mourned her husband's death. And even if Quinn were interested, how could she ever trust another man? How could she risk giving someone that kind of power over her again? The next morning, Amelia ventured out to the general store to purchase thread and fabric. She had decided to take in sewing to earn money, though she was not skilled enough to charge much. The store was crowded with drovers buying supplies, and she tried to keep to herself, but she felt eyes on her. The women of Brownsville had been polite but distant since Marcus's death. They had seen the occasional bruise she could not quite hide, but none had asked questions. Now, as a widow, she existed in a strange limbo, neither maiden nor wife, an object of pity and vague suspicion. She was examining a bolt of cotton when she heard a familiar voice. "That blue would suit you." Amelia turned to find Quinn standing a respectful distance away, his hat in his hands. He looked different in the morning light, younger perhaps, though she guessed he was near her own age of 23. There was a scar on his chin and laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than he frowned. "Mr. Carter," she said, surprised, "I thought you would have moved on with your herd." "The herd is resting for a few days. The trail boss wants to make sure they are strong before we push north." He gestured to the fabric. "Are you making something?" "I am hoping to take in sewing work. I need to earn my keep." The words came out more defensive than she intended. Quinn nodded, no judgment in his face. "My shirt could use mending if you are taking customers. I tore it on some barbed wire a few days back." It was a kindness, she knew, a way to give her work without making it feel like charity, Something in her chest loosened slightly. "I could do that. Bring it by the boarding house this afternoon." "I will. Thank you, Mrs. Lawson." "Amelia," she said, surprising herself. "You can call me Amelia." His smile was slow and warm. "Amelia, pretty name." She felt heat rise to her cheeks and quickly turned back to the fabric, making her purchase with fumbling hands. When she glanced back, Quinn was gone, but she could still feel the warmth of his smile like sunlight on her skin. True to his word, Quinn appeared at the boarding house that afternoon with his torn shirt. Mrs. Hoffman led him into the parlor where Amelia had set up her sewing basket. The tear was significant, running along the shoulder seam, but nothing she could not fix. "This will take me about an hour," Amelia said, examining the damage. "You can come back then, or wait if you prefer." "I will wait, if that is all right. I do not have many shirts to spare." He settled into a chair by the window, looking oddly at ease in the feminine space. "How long have you been in Brownsville, Amelia?" 2 years. My husband brought me here after we married." She focused on threading her needle, not meeting his eyes. "And you? Where are you from? All over, really." "I was born in Missouri, but my family moved to Texas when I was young. I have been working cattle drives since I was 16. It is a good life, mostly. Hard but free." "Do you not want to settle down somewhere? Have a ranch of your own?" Quinn was quiet for a moment. "I did once. I had a homestead up in the hill country, a small place, but it was mine. I was even courting a girl, planning to ask her father for permission to marry. What happened? Raiders came through, bandits looking for easy pickings. They burned my place to the ground and killed my younger brother who was staying with me." His voice was steady, but Amelia could hear the old pain beneath it. "The girl I was courting decided she wanted someone more established, someone who could give her security. I could not blame her. After that, I sold what was left and went back to driving cattle. Seemed easier than trying to build something permanent just to watch it burn." Amelia's hand stilled on the fabric. "I am so sorry. That is a terrible loss. It was a long time ago, 5 years now. But it taught me that the only thing you can really count on is yourself and maybe, if you are lucky, good people when you meet them." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Amelia felt seen in a way that was both frightening and exhilarating. "You strike me as good people, Amelia." "You do not know me," she said softly. "No, but I would like to." The words hung in the air between them. Amelia bent her head back to her sewing, her heart racing. This was dangerous. She should not encourage him, but God help her, she wanted to. She wanted to know what it felt like to have a man look at her with interest instead of ownership, with kindness instead of cruelty. "Why did you really step in yesterday?" she asked, changing the subject slightly. "Most men would have walked past." Quinn considered this. "My mother raised me to believe that a man's measure is not in how he treats his equals, but in how he treats those who cannot defend themselves. Those men were cowards, picking on women who could not fight back. I have no patience for cowards. Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was. "She died when I was 18. Fever took her." Quinn's voice was gentle with old grief, but she made sure her lessons stuck first. They talked while Amelia sewed, the conversation flowing easier than she would have expected. Quinn told her about the trail drives, about the time a stampede nearly swept him away, and the morning he woke to find a rattlesnake curled up in his boot. She found herself laughing, actually laughing, and the sound startled her. She could not remember the last time she had felt light enough for laughter. When the shirt was mended, Quinn paid her double what she asked. She protested, but he insisted. "Quality work deserves quality pay. Besides, I will likely be back. I am hard on clothes." After he left, Amelia sat with the coins in her palm and let herself imagine, just for a moment, what it might be like if things were different. If she were not carrying another man's child. if her past were not so heavy, if she had the freedom to accept the obvious interest in Quinn's eyes. But she was not free. She would never be free. Over the next week, Quinn found reasons to visit. He brought her more mending, though she suspected he was creating some of the tears himself. He walked her to the general store when she needed supplies, his presence deterring the rougher elements that frequented Brownsville's streets. They talked about everything and nothing, books and weather, and the peculiarities of Texas politics. He never pushed, never made her uncomfortable, just offered his steady presence like a gift with no strings attached. And slowly, carefully, Amelia felt something inside her begin to thaw. It was Mrs. Hoffman who noticed first. "That cowboy is sweet on you," she said one evening as they prepared dinner in the boarding house kitchen. "Quinn Carter, he has good eyes, honest eyes. He is just being kind," Amelia protested, but her cheeks warmed. "Kindness is how it starts." Mrs. Hoffman chopped vegetables with practiced efficiency. "My late husband was kind to me first. Everything else grew from that." Amelia's hand drifted to her stomach, a habit she was developing. She had not told anyone yet, but soon she would start to show. The thought filled her with anxiety. "Mrs. Hoffman, what would you say if I told you I was with child?" The knife stilled. Mrs. Hoffman set it down and wiped her hands on her apron. "I would say that you have my sympathy, given what I know of your late husband." Amelia looked up sharply. "What do you know?" "I know that a woman does not flinch when a man moves too quickly unless she has learned to fear men's movements. I know that you wore long sleeves in summer and never met anyone's eyes at church. I know that Marcus Lawson drank too much and smiled too widely in public." Mrs. Hoffman's voice was gentle but firm. "I know enough." Tears burned Amelia's eyes. "I am carrying his child, and I do not know how I am supposed to love it when every time I think about it I remember him." Mrs. Hoffman crossed the kitchen and pulled Amelia into a hug, the first real embrace she had felt in months. "A child is not its father. This baby will be its own person, and you will have the chance to raise it with love instead of fear. That is a gift, not a curse. But who will want me now? What man would take on another man's child, especially when that child is a reminder of someone like Marcus? The right man would. A good man would see you and that baby as a chance to build something better." Mrs. Hoffman pulled back, her eyes knowing. "And I think you might have found a good man already, if you will let yourself see it." That night, Amelia allowed herself to hope. Just a little. Just enough to imagine a future that did not feel like a prison sentence. The next afternoon, Quinn arrived with an invitation. "There is a dance tomorrow night at the church hall. Nothing fancy, just a fiddle player and some friendly folks. Would you consider going with me?" Amelia's first instinct was to refuse. But she looked at Quinn's hopeful expression and heard Mrs. Hoffman's words echoing in her mind. "The right man would see you as a gift." "Yes," she said before she could lose her courage. "I would like that." Quinn's face lit up like a sunrise. "Really? That is wonderful. I will call for you at 7. 7 is fine." After he left, Amelia stood in front of her small mirror and studied her reflection. She looked pale and too thin, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun that did nothing to soften her features. But her blue eyes held a spark that had not been there a week ago. Hope was a dangerous thing, but maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. The next evening, Amelia wore her best dress, a deep green that Marcus had bought her during their courtship. She had always hated it because he chose it, but now she realized she could take it back, make it hers again. She let her hair down and pinned it up more softly, leaving a few tendrils to frame her face. When Quinn arrived, his expression made every moment of preparation worth it. "You look beautiful," he said simply. And she believed him because there was no calculation in his voice, just honest admiration. The church hall was already crowded when they arrived, the fiddle player warming up while women set out plates of food and men stood in clusters discussing cattle prices and politics. Amelia felt the eyes on them immediately, the curious glances and whispered conversations. The widow Lawson with the cowboy. It would be all over town by morning. But when Quinn offered his hand for the first dance, she took it. He was not a graceful dancer, but he was enthusiastic and careful with her, guiding her through the steps without ever gripping too tightly. After months of avoiding touch, Amelia found herself relaxing into the movement, into the simple joy of music and motion. Between dances, Quinn introduced her to some of the other drovers from his outfit. They were rough men, weathered by sun and hard work, but they treated her with respect because Quinn did. She realized that this was another measure of his character, the way other men followed his lead in how they treated women. During a break in the music, they stepped outside for air. The night was warm and humid, the sky scattered with stars. They walked a little distance from the hall, finding a bench beneath a sprawling live oak. "Are you having a good time?" Quinn asked. "I am. Better than I have had in a very long time." Amelia hesitated, then decided to risk honesty. "You have made this week bearable, Quinn, more than bearable. You have reminded me that kindness exists. Amelia, I need to tell you something." Quinn turned to face her, his expression serious. "I know I am just a cowboy. I do not have much to offer beyond a decent horse and a strong back. But I have not been able to stop thinking about you since the day we met. And I know it is fast, probably too fast, but I want to keep knowing you. I want to court you properly if you will let me." Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment. She should tell him about the baby now before things went any further. But the words stuck in her throat, held back by fear. What if he changed his mind? What if he looked at her with disgust instead of warmth? "I would like that," she said instead, hating herself for the cowardice. "But Quinn, there are things about me, about my marriage, that you do not know." "Then tell me. I am listening." She took a shaking breath. "Marcus was not a good husband. He was not a good man. He hurt me, Quinn, many times, in many ways." The words came out in a rush, years of silence breaking like a dam. "And when he died, I did not mourn him. I was relieved. What kind of person does that make me?" Quinn was quiet for a long moment, and Amelia braced herself for judgment. But when he spoke, his voice was thick with barely controlled anger, though she knew instinctively it was not directed at her. "It makes you a survivor, and it makes me wish I could have met Marcus Lawson before he died, so I could have taught him what happens to men who hurt women." "You do not think less of me. Less of you. Amelia, I think more of you. You survived something terrible and came through it. That takes strength." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. "I am not him. I will never be him. And if you give me a chance, I will spend every day proving that to you." Tears spilled down her cheeks and she let them fall. "I want to believe that. Then believe it. I will wait as long as it takes for you to trust me." His thumb brushed over her knuckles, the touch gentle and grounding. "We will go as slow as you need." They sat there under the stars, hand in hand, and Amelia felt something shift inside her. Not healed, not yet, but beginning to mend. But she still had not told him about the baby, and the secret felt like a stone in her chest. The dance ended late, and Quinn walked Amelia back to the boarding house. At the door, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "Thank you for tonight. It was the best evening I have had in years." "For me too," Amelia whispered. After he left, she climbed the stairs to her room and pressed her hands against her stomach. Soon she would have to tell him. Soon she would have to risk losing the fragile happiness she had found. But not tonight. Tonight she would let herself hold on to hope a little longer. The next morning brought devastating news. Quinn arrived at the boarding house earlier than expected, his expression grim. "The trail boss just got word. We are moving out tomorrow instead of next week. There is a buyer in Kansas who needs the herd sooner than planned." Amelia felt the bottom drop out of her world. "Tomorrow? But I thought you had more time." "So did I. But when you work for someone else, you go when they say go." Quinn took her hands. "Come with me." "What? Come with me to Kansas? We can get married there, start fresh." "I know it is sudden, but Amelia, I do not want to lose you. I do not want to leave and wonder what might have been." It was everything she wanted and everything she feared. "Quinn, I cannot just leave. And there is something I need to tell you, something important." "Then tell me." But before she could speak, Mrs. Hoffman called from the kitchen. "Amelia, could you come help me for a moment?" Quinn squeezed her hands. "I need to get back to the herd, make sure everything is ready for tomorrow. But think about it, please. I will come back this evening and we can talk more." He was gone before she could respond, and Amelia stood in the empty parlor feeling like the world was spinning too fast. Mrs. Hoffman appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "I heard," the older woman said. "What are you going to do?" "I do not know. I should tell him about the baby, but what if he takes back his offer? What if he does not want damaged goods?" "You are not damaged goods. You are a woman who has suffered and survived, and if Quinn Carter is half the man he seems to be, he will see that." Mrs. Hoffman's voice was firm. "But you need to tell him before you make any decisions. He deserves to know, and you deserve to know if he is truly the man you hope he is." Amelia knew she was right. The secret had to come out, no matter the cost. That evening, Quinn returned as promised. They sat in the parlor, the setting sun casting long shadows across the floor. Amelia's hands were folded in her lap, gripping each other tightly enough to hurt. "I have been thinking about your offer all day," she began carefully, "and I want to say yes. God help me, Quinn, I want to say yes more than I have ever wanted anything, but I cannot do that without you knowing the truth. I already know the truth. Your husband hurt you, but that does not change how I feel about you. There is more." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I am with child. Marcus's child. I am almost 3 months along." The silence that followed was the longest of Amelia's life. She watched Quinn's face, trying to read his expression as he processed this information. Shock, certainly, but was there also disappointment? Disgust? Finally, he spoke. "Does anyone else know, Mrs. Hoffman?" "No one else." "And how do you feel about it?" About the baby, the question surprised her. No one had asked her that. "I do not know. I am afraid of it, afraid of what it represents, afraid I will not be able to love it the way a mother should." Quinn leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Can I tell you what I see when I look at you, Amelia? I see a woman who risked herself to help a stranger. I see someone who has every reason to be bitter and broken but is still fighting to build a life. I see someone who deserves better than what she has gotten." He paused, his eyes intense. "And I see a woman I am falling in love with." Amelia's breath caught. "Quinn, I know it is fast. I know it is probably crazy, but it is true. And that baby you are carrying, it is innocent. It did not ask to be created by a bad man. And if you will have me, if you will let me, I want to help you raise it. Not as Marcus Lawson's child, but as ours." Tears streamed down Amelia's face. "You cannot mean that. You do not want to take on someone else's burden." Quinn reached out and gently cupped her face, his thumb wiping away her tears. "It belongs to us now instead," he said firmly. "That baby, this life, all of it, not to Marcus, not to the past, to us if you will have me." Something broke open inside Amelia, all the fear and shame and loneliness pouring out in a wave of sobs. Quinn pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried, his hand gentle on her hair. He murmured soft words she could not quite hear, but the tone was everything. Safety, acceptance, love. When she finally calmed, she pulled back enough to look at him. "Are you sure? This is a huge thing, Quinn. A child that is not yours, a woman with a past full of pain. You deserve better than this." "I deserve you and you deserve me. That is what I know." His voice was steady, certain. "Marry me, Amelia. Come to Kansas with me. Let me prove that we can build something good together." "Yes." The word came out on a breath, barely audible, but it was enough. "Yes, I will marry you." Quinn's smile was brighter than the sun. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, and pressed a kiss to her forehead. It was chaste and sweet and perfect, the first kiss she had ever received that felt like a promise instead of a demand. They were married the next morning by the circuit preacher, with Mrs. Hoffman and a few of Quinn's fellow drovers as witnesses. Amelia wore the same green dress from the dance, and Quinn wore his cleanest shirt. The ceremony was simple and quick, but when Quinn slid a simple silver band onto her finger, Amelia felt the weight of it like an anchor, something to hold onto in a storm. "I will take care of you," Quinn promised, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Both of you, I swear it." After the ceremony, they joined the cattle drive heading north. Amelia rode in the supply wagon with the cook, a gruff older man named Henry, who took one look at her pale face and started making sure she ate regularly. The other drovers were polite and respectful, tipping their hats when they passed and making sure she had what she needed. But it was Quinn who was her constant, checking on her whenever he could break away from the herd, bringing her wildflowers he found along the trail, sitting with her in the evenings and talking about their future. "I am thinking we settle in Kansas after the drive," he said one night as they sat by the fire. "Find a place near a town, somewhere safe. Maybe start a small ranch, nothing too big, just enough to make a living." "That sounds perfect." Amelia leaned against his shoulder, marveling at how natural it felt. In the weeks since their marriage, she had slowly learned that touch did not have to hurt. Quinn never grabbed or pulled or demanded. He asked permission, moved slowly, respected her boundaries. And gradually, she found herself seeking his presence instead of fearing it. The trail was hard, dusty, and hot, with long days that left her exhausted. But it was also strangely freeing. Out here, no one knew her past. She was just Quinn Carter's wife, the woman who smiled when he rode by and laughed at Henry's terrible jokes. One evening, about a month into the drive, Amelia felt the baby move for the first time. It was just a flutter, like the brush of butterfly wings, but it shocked her into stillness. She pressed her hand against her stomach, which was now beginning to round noticeably. "Are you all right?" Quinn asked, immediately concerned. "I felt it. The baby moved." Quinn's eyes widened. "Really? Is that normal?" "I think so. The women back in Brownsville used to talk about quickening, when you first feel the baby move." She took his hand and placed it on her stomach, even though she knew it was too early for him to feel anything from the outside. "It is real now, not just something I was trying not to think about." "How do you feel about it?" It was the same question he had asked before, but now the answer was different, scared still, but maybe a little bit hopeful too. She looked up at him. "You really meant what you said, did you not, about this being our child?" "I meant every word." Quinn's voice was fierce with conviction. "That baby will know me as its father, and it will grow up knowing love instead of fear. I promise you that." Amelia kissed him then, really kissed him for the first time. It started tentative, testing, but Quinn responded with a gentleness that made her chest ache. When they pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I love you," she whispered. "I did not think I would ever be able to say that to anyone, but I do. I love you, Quinn Carter. I love you too." "More than I thought possible." He pressed his forehead against hers. "We are going to have a good life, Amelia. I will make sure of it." They reached Kansas in late August, the herd dusty and trail worn but intact. Quinn collected his pay from the trail boss and immediately started looking for land. He found a small parcel just outside a town called Abilene with a creek running through it and enough flat ground for a house and barn. "It is not much yet," he said as they stood looking at the empty land, "but I can build us a home here, a real home." Amelia could picture it, a small house with a porch, a vegetable garden, maybe some chickens, a place where their child could grow up safe and loved. "It is perfect." They spent the fall building. Quinn worked alongside a few carpenters he hired with their savings, and slowly a house took shape. It was small, just 3 rooms, but it was solid and well made. Amelia helped where she could, though Quinn and the carpenters insisted she rest as her pregnancy advanced. By October, the house was finished. They moved in on a crisp autumn day, carrying their few possessions inside. That night, they lay together in their own bed in their own house, and Amelia felt truly safe for the first time in years. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what? For seeing me, for wanting me, for taking on someone else's child without hesitation, for all of it." Quinn pulled her close, his hand resting on her swollen belly. "You do not need to thank me. This is where I want to be, right here with you." The baby chose that moment to kick, strong enough that Quinn felt it. He laughed, delighted. "That was a good one." "This baby is going to be a handful," Amelia predicted. "Strong-willed and stubborn." "Gets that from the mother," Quinn teased, and Amelia swatted his chest playfully. Winter came with snow that blanketed the prairie in white. Amelia grew larger and more uncomfortable, but Quinn was endlessly patient, rubbing her back when it ached and making sure she stayed warm. He had found work on a nearby ranch, earning enough to keep them fed while they established themselves. On a cold February morning in 1879, Amelia went into labor. Quinn rode for the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Patterson who had delivered half the babies in the county. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Amelia thought she could not endure it. But Quinn stayed beside her, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement, and somehow she found the strength to push through. When the baby finally came, wailing and red-faced, Mrs. Patterson cleaned it up and announced, "You have a son. A son." Amelia stared at the tiny, squirming creature the midwife placed in her arms. He had dark hair and a surprisingly strong grip, his little fingers curling around hers. She waited for the fear, the reminder of Marcus, but it did not come. Instead, she felt a fierce protectiveness surge through her. "He is perfect," Quinn breathed, leaning over to look at his son. Their son. "Absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Amelia asked. Quinn thought for a moment. "What about Thomas, after my brother?" Amelia remembered Quinn telling her about his younger brother who had died in the raid. "Thomas Carter, I like it. Tommy." The baby made a little noise, and they both laughed, giddy with exhaustion and joy. When Mrs. Patterson finally left, Quinn climbed carefully into bed beside Amelia, both of them watching Tommy sleep in his cradle. "I was so afraid," Amelia admitted quietly. "Afraid I would look at him and see Marcus, but I do not. I just see him, our son. That is because he is ours, nothing to do with the past, everything to do with the future." Quinn kissed her temple. "You did amazing, by the way. You are the strongest person I have ever met." The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Tommy was a good baby, all things considered, but he still demanded constant attention. Quinn threw himself into fatherhood with the same steady dedication he brought to everything else. He walked the floor with Tommy when he cried, changed diapers without complaint, and sang terrible off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. Amelia watched him with the baby and fell in love with him all over again. This was what family was supposed to be. Not fear and control, but partnership and love. As Tommy grew, it became clear he had his mother's blue eyes and an easy temperament that made him smile at everyone. The neighbors who stopped by commented on what a happy baby he was, and Amelia knew it was because he was growing up in a house full of love. On Tommy's first birthday, Quinn surprised Amelia with a gift. It was a small box, and inside was a silver locket. "Open it," he urged. Inside the locket was a tiny photograph of the three of them, taken by a traveling photographer who had passed through Abilene the month before. They looked like a real family, Quinn with his arm around Amelia, Tommy on her lap grinning his gummy smile. "So you always remember," Quinn said, "where we started and where we are now." Amelia threw her arms around him, blinking back tears. "How did I get so lucky? I am the lucky one. You gave me a family, a purpose. Everything I have is because of you." That night, after Tommy was asleep, they sat on their porch watching the stars. The prairie stretched out around them, vast and quiet, and Amelia felt a peace she had never imagined possible. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking me on, I mean. Taking on all my baggage." Quinn pulled her close. "Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Amelia Carter. You and Tommy both." "I want more," she said suddenly. "More children, I mean. I want Tommy to have siblings. I want to fill this house with noise and chaos and love." Quinn grinned. "I think that can be arranged." 2 years later, Amelia gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. They named the boy James and the girl Eleanor, and the house became exactly as chaotic as Amelia had hoped. Tommy was a devoted big brother, helping with the babies and entertaining them when they fussed. Quinn expanded their property, buying more land and building up a small but profitable cattle operation. They were not rich, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. One evening, when the children were all asleep and the house was finally quiet, Amelia and Quinn sat together in the parlor. She was mending one of James's shirts while Quinn repaired a bridle. "You remember the day we met?" Amelia asked. "Every detail. You were the bravest woman I had ever seen, facing down those men. I was terrified, but then you appeared, and I remember thinking you had kind eyes." Quinn set down the bridle and crossed to sit beside her. "I remember thinking you deserved better than whatever life you had been living. You looked so sad, even when you were being brave." "I was sad. I felt hopeless, actually, like my life was over before it had really begun." She took his hand. "And then you proved me wrong. You showed me that it was possible to be happy, to feel safe. You gave me a family and a home and a life worth living." "We gave that to each other," Quinn corrected. "You saved me just as much as I saved you. Before you, I was just drifting, going through the motions. You gave me something to build toward, something to protect and cherish." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the ticking of the mantel clock the only sound. Outside, a coyote called in the distance, and the wind rustled through the cottonwoods Quinn had planted when they first broke ground on the house. "I am glad you said it that day," Amelia said softly. "Said what?" "That the baby belonged to us instead. You had no reason to take that on, but you did not hesitate. You just decided to love us both. I do not think I ever thanked you properly for that." Quinn lifted her hand and kissed her palm. "You thank me every day by being here, by choosing me, by building this life with me. Tommy is my son in every way that matters, and James and Eleanor are the bonuses I got for being smart enough to marry you." Amelia laughed. "The twins are a lot of things, but I do not know if bonus is the word I would use. Exhausting, maybe." "Exhausting bonuses, then." Quinn's expression turned more serious. "But Amelia, I need you to know something. I have never once thought of Tommy as anything but mine. When I look at him, I do not see the past. I see our future. I see the boy we are raising together, who will grow up to be a good man because he has a mother who loves him and a father who will never let him doubt his worth." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes. Even after all these years, Quinn could still make her cry with his earnest declarations. "He adores you, they all do." "The feeling is very mutual." Quinn pulled her closer. "I love our life, Amelia. Every single chaotic, exhausting, wonderful moment of it. Me too." As the years passed, their family continued to grow. Amelia had 2 more children, another girl they named Rose and a boy they called Henry after the old trail cook who had helped her on the cattle drive. The house expanded with the family, Quinn adding rooms as they needed them. Tommy grew into a quiet, thoughtful boy who loved working with his father and had a gift for gentling horses. He never knew that Quinn was not his biological father until he was nearly grown, and when Amelia finally told him the truth, his response was simple and immediate. "Quinn is my father. I do not care about anything else." The other children grew up healthy and happy, the house always full of laughter and noise. The ranch prospered, and Quinn became known in the county as a fair man and a hard worker. Amelia became involved with the church and the school, using her own experiences to help other women who found themselves in difficult situations. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Quinn surprised Amelia with a trip back to Brownsville. She had not been back since they left, and she was nervous about returning to the place where so much pain had occurred. But Quinn held her hand as they rode into town, and she realized that the place no longer had power over her. They visited Mrs. Hoffman, who had aged but was still running her boarding house with the same quiet efficiency. She cried when she saw them, pulling Amelia into a tight hug. "Look at you," she marveled. "You are glowing, happy." "I am, thanks in no small part to you." Amelia introduced her children, who were all fascinated by the town their parents had left so long ago. That night, as they prepared to head back to Kansas, Amelia stood in the street where she had first met Quinn. She could still picture it, the frightened woman she had been and the cowboy who had stepped in to help. "What are you thinking?" Quinn asked, coming to stand beside her. "That I am grateful for that day. If those men had not been harassing that woman, if I had not intervened, if you had not been there, none of this would have happened. We would not have happened. I like to think we would have found each other somehow, fate and all that." Amelia leaned against him. "Maybe. But I am glad it happened the way it did. Every moment, every choice led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be." They returned to Kansas, to their ranch and their children and their life. The years continued to unfold, bringing challenges and joys in equal measure. There were hard winters and dry summers, illnesses and injuries, the normal trials of life on the prairie. But through it all, Quinn and Amelia faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing year. On the evening of their 20th wedding anniversary, they stood on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Their children were scattered around the property, the older ones helping with evening chores while the younger ones played in the yard. The sound of their laughter floated on the evening breeze. 20 years, Amelia mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and sometimes it feels like forever. "The good kind of forever, though," Quinn said, his arm around her waist. "Definitely the good kind." She turned to face him, taking in the gray threading through his hair and the lines around his eyes. He was still the same man who had defended her in a dusty Texas street, still steady and kind and true. "I love you, Quinn Carter. More now than I did when we married, and I thought that was impossible. I love you too. You are my whole world, Amelia. You and these children, this life we built. It is everything I never knew I needed." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, and Amelia felt the same flutter of joy she had felt the first time he kissed her all those years ago. Some things, she thought, never got old. Tommy, now a young man of 21, called from the barn that one of the horses was about to foal. The whole family gathered to watch the birth, a tradition they had maintained over the years. As the foal struggled to its feet on wobbly legs, Tommy looked over at his parents with a grin. "Think this one will be a good cow pony, Pa?" "With your training, I am sure it will be," Quinn replied, and the pride in his voice was unmistakable. Later, when the children were all in bed and the house was quiet, Quinn and Amelia lay together in the darkness. Her head rested on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you remember what you said to me that day?" she asked. "When I told you about the baby, I said a lot of things that day. You said it belongs to us now instead. You claimed us both without hesitation, without conditions. That was the moment I knew I could trust you, that you were different from any man I had ever known." Quinn's arms tightened around her. "That was the truth then, and it is the truth now. Everything good in my life started the day I met you. You gave me a purpose, a family, a reason to build instead of just wander. I cannot imagine my life without you." "You will never have to," Amelia promised. "We have this life, these children, this love. We built something real and lasting out of pain and fear. That is our triumph, Quinn. We took the worst things that happened to us and created something beautiful anyway. We did we not?" He kissed the top of her head. "And we are not done yet. We still have grandchildren to spoil and more adventures to have." Amelia laughed. "Grandchildren? Tommy is not even courting anyone yet. Give him time. I have seen the way the Johnson girl looks at him." They talked late into the night, reminiscing and planning, dreaming and hoping. When they finally drifted off to sleep, they were wrapped in each other's arms, two people who had found home in each other. The years continued their steady march. Tommy did eventually marry the Johnson girl, Sarah, and they gave Quinn and Amelia their first grandchild, a little girl named Abigail. The other children grew and found their own paths. James took over more of the ranch operations, while Alina married a schoolteacher and moved to town. Rose showed a talent for music and began teaching piano, and young Henry declared his intention to become a veterinarian. Quinn and Amelia watched their family expand with pride and joy. Their house remained the center of family gatherings, always full of noise and love, and the chaos of children and grandchildren. On a warm summer evening, when Amelia was 52 and Quinn was 53, they sat together on the porch as the sun set. It was their ritual now, this quiet time together at the end of the day. Their bodies were not as young as they once were, but their love had only deepened, weathered and tested and proven true. "Do you ever think about how different your life could have been?" Quinn asked suddenly. "Sometimes, but I do not dwell on it. The life I could have had does not compare to the life I did have." She squeezed his hand. "You saved me, Quinn, not just from those men in the street, but from a life of fear and loneliness. You gave me a chance to be happy, to be loved, to be more than what my past tried to make me." "We saved each other," Quinn corrected gently. "I was lost before you, just going through the motions. You gave me a reason to settle, to build, to hope. You made me want to be better." Amelia rested her head on his shoulder, watching as Abigail and her cousins played in the yard. The children's laughter was the sweetest sound in the world. "We built a good life together." "The best life," Quinn agreed. "And it all started with a cowboy and a woman who was brave enough to ask for help and strong enough to accept it. We really did it, did we not? Made something beautiful out of all that pain. We did. And I would do it all over again, every moment, just to end up right here with you." As darkness fell and the stars began to emerge, Quinn and Amelia remained on the porch, surrounded by the sounds of their family. The baby that had once represented nothing but fear and pain had grown into a fine man with a family of his own. The cowboy who had stepped in to help a stranger had become the foundation of a legacy of love and kindness. Tommy came out to join them, Sarah and Abigail following behind. "We are heading home, but we will see you on Sunday for dinner," he said. "We will be here," Amelia promised, standing to hug her son and daughter-in-law after they left. Quinn stood and offered his hand to Amelia. "Ready to head inside, Mrs. Carter? In a minute. I want to savor this a bit longer." She looked out over the land they had cultivated, the home they had built, the family they had created. 28 years ago, I stood in a street in Brownsville and thought my life was over. I was carrying a child I did not know how to love and facing a future that looked impossibly dark. And then you appeared. "Best day of my life," Quinn said simply. "Mine too. Because you taught me that love does not have to hurt, that family can be chosen, that the past does not have to define the future. You gave me everything, Quinn. A home, a family, a life worth living. You took a broken woman and a baby that belonged to someone who hurt her, and you said those magic words. 'It belongs to us now instead,'" Quinn repeated, the same conviction in his voice that had been there all those years ago. "And it always will. Every bit of happiness, every moment of joy, every child and grandchild, all of it belongs to us. We built this together, and no one can take that away." Amelia kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into that simple gesture. When they pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. "Come on," she said, taking his hand. "Let's go inside. Our home is waiting." They walked into their house together, past photographs of their children and grandchildren, past furniture worn smooth with use and love, past windows that looked out on land they had nurtured for decades. Every corner held memories. Every room echoed with laughter and tears, and the ordinary moments that make up a life well lived. As they prepared for bed, moving around each other with the ease of long practice, Amelia thought about that frightened woman she had been. If she could go back and tell her that everything would be all right, that she would find love and safety and joy beyond measure, would she believe it? Probably not. But it did not matter because she had lived it. She knew it was true. Quinn caught her around the waist as she passed, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I love you, Amelia Carter. Thank you for choosing me." "Thank you for choosing us," she replied, thinking of herself and Tommy all those years ago, two lost souls that Quinn had claimed without hesitation. "You are the best man I have ever known." That night, they fell asleep as they always did, wrapped in each other's arms, safe and loved and home. Outside, the Kansas prairie stretched vast and quiet under a blanket of stars. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called and the wind whispered through the grass. But inside the house Quinn and Amelia Carter had built together, all was peaceful. All was well. All belonged to them now. A legacy of love that would echo through generations, proof that even the darkest beginnings can lead to the brightest endings. Their story was not just about survival, though they had both survived. It was about transformation, about taking the broken pieces of their pasts and forging something beautiful and whole. It was about a cowboy who saw a woman in trouble and chose kindness. About a woman who found the courage to accept help and to hope again. About a baby who became the first thread in a tapestry of family and love that would span decades. And in the end, it was about the simple truth that love, real love, the kind that chooses and claims and nurtures, can heal even the deepest wounds and create miracles from the ashes of despair. Quinn and Amelia had proved that truth every day of their lives together, and their family would carry that legacy forward long after they were gone. The baby that had belonged to a man who hurt her had indeed become theirs instead, and from that single act of claiming had grown a dynasty of love.